Midnight.
So, I usually don't make videos on the same subject like twice in a row, and last week I had a good time covering an episode of Avatar, so I figured it'd be a little while before I touched on it again. Then, this Netflix news dropped. For those who might not know, Netflix is in the process of making a live-action series out of Avatar: The Last Airbender, an announcement met with a ton of cautious optimism a few years ago. We've heard basically nothing since, and now it seems like we know why. Things aren't going too well. The creators of the franchise announced on their blogs and social media that they would no longer be involved with the live-action adaptation going forward. And to be honest, this really caught me off guard. Sure, I've been critical of Netflix in the past, and by the past I mean like last month, but Mike and Bryan, on paper, seem like they would have a fantastic working relationship with the company. After all, it was Avatar coming to Netflix that caused the massive renewed boom in the show's popularity more than a decade after it ended. And one of the show's head writers, Aaron Ehas, has found a great home for himself there, co-creating The Dragon Prince. But apparently, things just aren't working out so well on the live-action front. While Mike's statement is fairly diplomatic, Bryan was very upfront with what happened in an Instagram post, saying, "When Netflix brought me on board to run this series alongside Mike 2 years ago, they made a very public promise to support our vision. Unfortunately, there was no follow-through on that promise. The general handling of the project created what I felt was a negative and unsupportive environment. Like I said, at first glance, I thought that was really weird, but honestly, the more I thought about it, the more it did make sense to me. When it comes to smaller Netflix shows or projects like Russian Doll or Master of None, they seem to allow a lot of creative freedom. But I think, for better or more likely for worse, they're approaching Avatar very differently. We know Netflix is always on the hunt for their next Stranger Things or Witcher. These massive, franchisable IPs that can drive the online conversation and gain subscribers around the world. And I'm sure with the big success of the animated series on their platform, they see a slightly older skewing live-action Avatar as the perfect opportunity to create one of those. Which makes me feel like they're thinking of the show more in terms of making the most marketable extension of the brand possible, and not as the singular creative vision of Mike and Bryan that they want to support. Basically, I think they view the brand as bigger than the creators, and since those two guys don't have much experience in live action work, they may not trust them with this major name, even though they, created it. I probably don't have to tell you that I think that's a mistake, but the announcement is extra rough since, of all the times it could have happened, it was right when The Legend of Korra was right about to drop on Netflix. Really bad timing that puts a huge damper on what should have been a big week for Avatar fans.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah. Guess so. Just stop doing that stuff around here.
Netflix doesn't do public breakups with their showrunners too often, but the shows this has happened with, I think, are pretty telling. Look at Daredevil and especially Jessica Jones. Two other instances of Netflix showrunners leaving very high-profile shows. On the surface, those have very little in common with Avatar, but they do share one thing. Marvel and Avatar are both big brands, expected to be big mass audience hits. A live-action Avatar would not be a niche, inexpensive show like, one of my favorite Netflix shows, I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson, which clearly appeals to a smaller audience, but also costs a lot less to make. No, this is supposed to be a 4-quadrant hit, and possibly give Netflix their own Harry Potter or Star Wars, something they're on record as desperately wanting. And it will almost certainly cost a blockbuster movie amount of money to make. And once that much money and brand management gets involved, the creative voices behind these shows can kind of take a back seat.
Muchas gracias por ver el video hasta el final. Te recuerdo que el video no es de mi autoría, yo solo he realizado la traducción. Si te ha gustado, te agradecería que me dejaras un like. También te recuerdo que puedes pasarte por mi Instagram donde estaré subiendo contenido de Avatar. Y nos vemos hasta la próxima.